Our entire interview with three of the four original members of April Wine: David Henman, their guitarist and vocalist; Jim Henman, their bass player and vocalist; and Richie Henman, their drummer. The other member, of course, was Miles Goodwin, who went on to greatness with that band. But we talk about their new song, She's So Cool, how they looked at Miles Goodwin, how April Wine evolved, and do they have regrets on leaving the band? Henman, and Henman on Rock History Canada. April Wine came together in Halifax, and it was a family affair. Brothers David and Richie Henman, along with their cousin Jim Henman, teamed up with singer-guitarist Miles Goodwin to form that original lineup. The Henman family literally fueled the dream. The brothers' parents bought them a van and gave them a gas card so they could get around. If you're going to do it, you might as well do it right. With lots of talent and timing on their side, the four recorded April Wine's self-titled debut album in 1971. There were 8 tracks on the album. David Henman wrote 2, Jim 3, Miles 2, and they all co-wrote a song called Wench. But it was the tune Fast Train that became a hit single, their very first. But change came quickly after the release of the first album. Bassist singer Jim Henman left the band. He was replaced by Jim Clench. And that set the stage for Mark II, as Deep Purple would call their incarnations. We'll do the same for April Wine. And that incarnation lasted for 2 albums, On Record and Electric Jewels. And it was on the latter that the band changed again. The Henman brothers left, and in came Gary Moffat on guitar and Jerry Mercer on drums. We'll get into other lineups of April Wine in later episodes. Anyone who's watching this knows that I'm an incredibly huge April Wine fan. Miles Goodwin and April Wine were my favorites. So it was strange doing this interview. It was kind of, for a split second, when I saw myself beside David Henman on top, Richie Henman below me, and across was Jim Henman, I thought, the only guy missing is Miles Goodwin. And like I said, we lost him in 2023. But he should be in my spot for that very first incarnation of April Wine. Let's talk about the new song, The Fantastic Henman Family, which are very close. But these are the guys who started it with Miles Goodwin on Rock History Music. Musicians don't retire. So what's your guys' thought on that?
Yeah, that's you can't not do this. You can't just walk away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like a regular job where you can just one day put all the tools in the briefcase away and just say, no, I'm not doing that anymore. It's an addiction. It's a drug.
Yeah, it's a curse. It's a blessing and a curse. But yeah, you can't, I mean, look at the Stones. They're doing supposedly they're doing their final tour now, right? This is the big one. Well, how long do you think they're going to be on the planet once they stop doing what they do? Because that's the whole thing about aging. Whatever you're doing, if you've been climbing stairs all your life, don't stop. If you've been putting on your socks while standing up and keeping your balance, keep doing it.
What about you, Jim?
I agree. You know what? I don't know what I'd do if I didn't do this.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a golf player. I tried it, but I hurt my back. I don't have anything else that you can say. Kind of, you take a hobby and make it into something that you love doing, and you try to do the best you can, and it keeps you going. I would drive my wife crazy.
I learned to ask people how they met. How do you guys, even if they're miserable, they'll light up, they go, oh yeah, well, but purpose isn't a thing that I've learned in interviews, that people go, oh God, I think I'm doing my best work, even if it's not true. And a lot of times, being able to produce that music, doing this thing that you were doing when maybe in '64 when you saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, there's something to that, because I just got back from a woman's house and her parents watch TV for 10 hours a day, and I'm going, some days that's fine.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting what you said there about some people are doing their best work. A lot of guys that I associate with, songwriters I associate with, Jim being a perfect example, and this song being a perfect example, are writing their best songs in their 60s, 70s, and maybe 80s. I've got a friend who's, he's an okay songwriter. He's written some okay songs, but now that he's, much older, he writes songs that I just have me on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a depth to that, right? When you get older, you dig deeper.
Yeah, your experience comes into play. Your instincts that you've developed for however many decades, and your experience, they come into play.
Yeah. Richie, has music always been in your life?
Oh, always. Probably since the age of 5 or 6, when I
Yeah.
fell in love with Patty Page. But we do
Richie
this. We
froze.
start doing this
Oh, there he
because
is.
it fills some place in our souls. And when people start paying you to do it and enable you to make a career out of it, that's the icing on the cake. But when that's gone, the cake remains. The cake is
That's right.
still there to
Yeah.
be. Once you've eaten all the icing, the cake is still there to enjoy.
Have you guys always been in contact with each other? I mean, are you guys that kind of family? I know you guys are brothers, but you're the
Yeah,
cousin,
it
Jim.
really is that kind of family.
Yeah.
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 Yeah,
David,
Jim has a
Rich-
large family. Almost all of them are musicians, and now some of the Jim's son is a songwriter. And yeah, there's a lot of music in this family.
Well, I can't help but, when I was Richie, I was reading the book and which I really enjoyed, as I told you before, the van story. Again, we'll get to the song in a second, but that van story, what parents would do that was a nice little van that you guys traveled around in the early days. How did that come about? Did you have a piece of crap before? What happened?
It was we got a lot of support from our parents, and when we put April Wine together, and we were talking about the idea of going to leaving Nova Scotia and going west. I forget how it happened, but Dad volunteered to finance a van. It turned out to be a big GMC window van for us. And Dad was into working at dealerships and working at General Motors at the time, I believe. And so, yeah, I don't know how he did it, but
Yeah.
Dad,
Go ahead, Rich.
Dad saw it as we were going off to start a business, essentially. And Dad's attitude was that you can't be successful if you're broken down on the side of the road somewhere and missing a show.
yeah.
So he insisted on a brand new van. And on top of that, he gave us an Esso credit card that would enable us to keep gas in it and keep it serviced. The plan being, from his point of view, to make us efficient as possible. You got to get to where, if you're going to get a career, you got to get there first. And you got to get there comfortably and safely and reliably. Reliability was his whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
they were pretty supportive.
We had good parents.
The new song, where did that come from? Is it an older song, Jim? Because I love the before you answer, I love the retro feel to it, and it's one of those tunes that just made me lower my shoulders and went, oh, I really like this. Tell me about that.
Well, it is an older song. It's like 30 years old, and it was a jam song. When I think I was living by Martinique Beach in the Eastern Shore of Nova Scotia. I had retired from my day job and was going back into writing seriously and trying to perform and have some kind of a little career before I kicked the bucket. And I used to take the whatever I had, that Cool Edit, I think it was called Cool Edit, a little recording program, and I would set up a drum track, a little drum track, and I'd either play acoustic guitar or bass, and I would just jam. It was like fun for me. But this particular time, this song came out with that she's so cool, that just came out, and there was a little verse there, and the chord pattern was there, and everything. It just happened, and I put a bass on it, put an electric guitar on it, and did things like that. But I didn't do anything with it because I was playing at that time kind of rootsy stuff, acoustic rootsy music, some blues and Delta bluesy stuff and that, and it didn't fit in with what I was doing at that time, because I didn't know exactly where I was going. So I let it sit there for probably 10 years, and then I was out in Nelson. You and I were talking about Nelson earlier, John. I was out in Nelson visiting one of my sisters, and her son, who was only a kid then, he was about 16, he was getting into recording. and he was into hip hop, which he still is into. He's a producer out there in BC. And I said, well, geez, let's fool around with this old song that I jammed on and do it. So we did it all up, and I have a copy of it somewhere, but it's hip hop. How we made that switch, I don't know. But
Yeah.
so I didn't do anything with it, of course. It was just fun. But about a year ago, I discovered it. And I said, geez, I like this song. I'm going to do something with it. So I needed, of course, a rewrite. The lyrics didn't make sense. They weren't even polished. So I had just met a friend through Katie Kelly, who's here in Halifax, one of the CTV girls that works on the Bell Network. And she had told me she wanted me to write a Christmas song for Christmas Daddies, because Miles and I always did Christmas Daddies. And we had written a Christmas song before and released it for Christmas Daddies, and she wanted me to do it again. So I had met her as a friend through that. And her husband, Josh, is a producer and a recording guy. So he volunteered to do the Christmas song. And then when I thought of rewriting this one, I thought, oh, Josh would be the guy to work with on this. So I kind of got him to co-write it with me. You know, we worked on it together. And he's the engineer and the producer on that project. That's how it came about.
No idea it was an older song.
Yeah, it was a really old, 30 years old, David.
Wow.
I wanted to be about Halifax, and I went through a whole bunch of transitional things on that to try to make it feel, like you said, retro.
Yeah,
And
well, you know,
David-
it does feel retro, but it also feels current at the same time. To me, it kind of you know, bridges a pretty broad spectrum of styles. And
Yeah,
I can hear the elements of hip hop in there. That's sure
There is a little. I did leave a little in.
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
David and Richie, how did you guys, like, was it a phone call? How did that beautiful, because everyone loves a reunion. I was telling Jim that like maybe 50 times the last hour we were talking, because, you know, people are nostalgic, and I mean, really, there was 4 guys on that first April Wine album, and I'm talking to 3 of them right now. And so everyone loves a reunion. How do you guys get involved?
It's kind of serendipitous, I think. I don't think it was intended as a reunion. It's just, but then there we were, all 3 of us, and so, you know, but I don't think it was intended that way. But it's just, I mean, when Jimmy sent me the song, I just fell in love with it instantly, and I was like, Jim, what's going on here? Where did this come from? Because it's not so much that Jim's other songs aren't up to this song. It's just that it's so different from what I'm used to hearing from Jim, which is much more Americana, much more folky. But with Jim writes folk songs that focus on the rhythms. I don't know what you would call that, but you know, and this song's no exception. It's got really, really catchy, really strong rhythms, but it's so different from what I'm used to hearing. I was almost shocked, and I wanted to get on board instantly.
Yeah, Richie.
It was just Jim emailed and said, "Do you want to play on a song that I wrote?" And you know, it was like, "Yes, when could I do it?" You know, that's all. It would have been the same if David had anytime if either of these 2 guys calls and says, "Can you play on one of my songs?" Yep. Where do you want? When? What do you want me to do? Oh,
Is a band still a band? Foreigner is always the quintessential band that comes up. And, you know, half the people I talk to, guys, they go, well, if they want to call it Foreigner, it's Foreigner. And that's what it is, because, and other people say, well, you know, because it's your take on that. Because, I mean, some people are, you know, I know the comments. Some people are going to go, well, this is more April Wine than April Wine is. You know, that when you
know, actually, the 3 of us, we kind of precede April Wine. We had a band before April Wine called Prism, not the West Coast Prism, but the Nova Scotia Prism, which precedes the West Coast Prism. And but I mean, gee whiz, Jim and I started writing songs together when we were around 12 or something. You know,
12.
We had that musical relationship all the way along. And you know, way back when, Jim had a band with Miles called Woody's Termites, and Richie and I had a band called the Shantays.
I thought it was Banana Splat.
Chantays.
Shantays, and then we had Far Cries, Banana Splat, which was the past tense of Banana Split. And then when we moved back to Halifax, we put together a band with Jim called Prism.
That's
So yeah,
good.
but we've got a lot of history that precedes April Wine.
I guess David and Rich, that's why I put my backdrop, my, what do you call it, the back thing there. And that's, if I move my head, that's the three of us
Yeah.
at the top
Yeah.
at the Shore Club. And I still remember that gig. It was
Yeah.
a wild time. This is David on the left, Rich, you're in the center, and I'm on the right there from my point of view here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, we have a long history, John.
Yeah.
And
There's also a certain comfort level that we, as brothers and cousins, getting along is kind of, you just do it. You just, I don't think we've ever had an argument in 50, 60, years, 70 years. I don't think we've ever had an argument about music. You just play it. You don't think about it in that terms for whatever reason,
Jim, you had said before we were just chatting pre-interview that there was this is a nice feeling because you had felt when you left the band after the first album that you kind of let them down a little bit. Talk about that.
Yeah, I did. I always thought that, and I talked to Miles about it a couple of times too, because I felt the same way with him. But when I made the decision to leave, I think it was only end of '71, wasn't it, guys?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'd only been together 2 years at that point. We achieved a lot in 2 years. We were working on our second album. Second album. And I came away with knowing why I did it, but at the same time, I didn't tell anybody. Well, I didn't know at first why I did it. It was later on that it hit me why I made that decision, really, why I was feeling the way I felt. But I always felt like I had let Dave and Rich down, more than Miles, perhaps. Dave and Rich, because there was a relative issue. They were cousins, cousins. And I had talked them into starting this band. I remember I had gone to David and said, David, I was at university, so the three of us were, weren't we, at St. Mary's? And I said, David, I can't handle this university thing. I'm not doing well, whatever. I want to quit. I want to start a band and take off. We'll write some tunes and take off. And I kind of talked David into it on one level, and that was up until he said, well, I want you to go talk to Miles to see if he'll join us, which I did, and which I talked him into. But Richie, I believe Richie was a little more conservative. He said, I'm not quitting university. I'm going to keep going until I see where this is going. I believe that's true, isn't it, Rich?
I wanted to hear the songs first.
Oh, it was
I needed to hear I needed to hear the music, so I'd that was like, okay, if the songs are good, that's as close as I'll get to a guarantee, and it didn't take long.
No, it didn't take long, and I think at that point, when I left, I felt like I owed them something, and I could never ever pay them back for having kind of abandoned them in a certain way on something that I had really promoted from the first. So when I thought of having David and Rich on this song, for me it was like, yes, this has to be. They have to be on this song, no matter what.
Full circle.
Full circle.
With this coming together, and I know you said it's not worth putting an album together, but fans are going to go, wouldn't it be nice? And are you going to call it Henman? Just Henman?
David and I have been talking about that. What did we come up with, David? Do you remember?
We come up with Henman, Henman, and Henman.
That was it. Henman, Henman, and Henman. That was it. My memory's not as good as David's.
Isn't it interesting, though, how Canada just knows your name? I mean, the thing is, there's no one who knows about April Wine who would never, you have to have a start, and the start is the most important part, and then you got to keep slugging at it. But the fact that, Canada knows the Henman name, which has got to be satisfying for you guys.
Yeah, it is satisfying. I think Dave and Rich would agree with me. I'm very proud of what we did, and I realized that when Miles took over as center of the band, he took it in a direction that would have been different than we did.
Yeah.
And you can tell from this song that we're working on that it would have been different. He chose to go that real, in some ways, quite heavier than I would have, you know. And I think, David, you were kind of along with the ride, though, weren't you, as far as the style?
Well, I was very, at the time, I was very, very anti-commercial and anti-mainstream. I wanted to do Frank Zappa and you know, Captain Beefheart and anything off the wall. I wanted to go completely outside the mainstream. And then Miles wrote that song Fast Train, which to this day still sounds fresh. It still sounds like it was written this morning, and that, to me, that, you know, then I was like, oh, I like that. Maybe I could do that. So it changed my thinking around, you know, 180.
Richie, I think I told you last time we talked. There was, when I heard You Could Have Been a Lady on the radio. My thing was, first of all, I wanted to be there's many drummers who got me to drumming. My son's a very good drummer, but me, not so much. But I picked up the drums because of your drumming on You Could Have Been a Lady. That was one of the things when I heard that. First of all, before you say anything about that, whose idea was it to bring that song to the, I mean, I know who wrote, it's the Hot Chocolate song, but where did you guys get that?
That was our producer, Ralph Murphy, brought that song. He was looking for, he had been asked by our manager to look for a single in case we didn't come up with one. And he brought us that, and what was the other one? Weeping Widow and Bad Side of the Moon. He also brought us, people don't know, at the same time as Could Have Been a Lady, he brought us a song by a new band from California called the Eagles that he had checked with them. It was Witchy Woman. And he asked them, are you going to release that as a single? And they said, no, we don't plan to. And Ralph said to them, well, I think it would be a great single. Do you mind if I get this band from Montreal to record it? And so he brought Witchy Woman along as well. Before we even got to work on it, the Eagles changed their mind and released it as, I believe, their second single. I don't know if that's because Ralph told them he thought could be a hit, but in any case, for whatever reason, they did decide to release it. So we passed on it. We did Could Have Been a Lady and Bad Side of the Moon instead. And that's how that, but it was Ralph, our producer. He had been told to find us a single, basically, just in case we didn't write another one. But David wrote Drop Your Guns, and that solved that little problem.
Jim, what was your reaction when you hear on record, you're not there anymore? What was your reaction to, did you feel a certain sense of, because things, I mean, with You Could Have Been a Lady, and that took off. I mean, Miles had said in the interview, remember, Jim, I told you the guy that gave me all his interviews, he interviewed Miles when he released his first solo album. And Miles had told my buddy Steve, I've got the interview, I own it now, that he felt You Could Have Been a Lady was a lost opportunity. He says that was a lost opportunity because the band could have really stretched on that. I don't know if you guys probably talked to Miles about that since then, but that's what Miles said in that interview.
Yeah, I think he told me the same thing. You know, we had some great times the last 7 years that I played with him with the acoustic thing. We talked a lot about different things in life and to do with music. And I got the impression from him that he didn't respect business-wise the management and people involved in the business side. And it's really funny because when David and Rich and I, when Miles invited us up to Massey Hall, 2 years ago, to get September, it's actually 2 years ago exactly, isn't it, this month?
Yeah.
We were inducted along with April Wine into the Walk of Fame. It was David that led me this way. When we were after the awards, we were downstairs, and David was talking to this gentleman who I knew, but I didn't know who he was. I couldn't put his face, and it turned out to be Terry Flood, the manager.
Terry Flood, yeah.
One time, and so I went over to talk to him. David introduced me to him, and of course we remembered each other then, and we're talking, and Terry said to me, he was quite honest. He said, "Jim, we had no idea what we were doing back then."
Yeah, it was all brand new.
It was all brand new to Terry Flood. It was brand new to DKD, to Donald, everybody. and to us. I mean, at that time when the Juno, what was it, CRTC ruling, what was it, Maple? Yeah, Maple. When that came in, it was around the same time that we went up there. We didn't know this, but they were taking bands that everybody, they were saying, oh, let's try this person, let's try this person. And we were very lucky. We were very lucky because Fast Train, of course.
Yeah.
It stuck to the wall. That's all they were doing, throwing things out, see if they stuck to the wall. And Fast Train stuck to the wall.
Irresistible song.
Yeah, that's what allowed April Wine to really become what they became, along with the hard work of.
You could have been a lady with when the guitar comes in. That's two different guys. Who did that and who did the solo?
I did the solo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually got a compliment on that solo from, it was Kelly J. Crowbar. He told me he liked that solo.
Miles did that choppy rhythm. That's a very signature Miles kind of rhythm.
Yeah.
He would always play those clicks on the strings in between, jank, 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 jank. He was always doing those little rhythmic clicks on the strings.
He was an awesome rhythm guitarist.
So yeah, that was the basis that's how we started our arrangement of the song, was based on that choppy rhythm that Miles came up with. The truth is, none of us much cared for the song, but we could see the potential for a hit. And I think, Jimmy, what you might have started out to say before when you were talking to Miles 2 years ago at Massey Hall when we got that Walk of Fame award was he was probably going to say the same thing I always said, which was I never really much cared for the song, but nowadays when a royalty check comes in, I find I kind of like the thing. But yeah, we weren't crazy about it, but we saw it as a means to an end. Never dreaming or realizing that once that happens, you got to play that song every time you go on stage if it's a hit. And I think Miles maybe over the years may have gotten that may have worn on him, having to, gosh, do I still have to play that one? Yeah, sorry, dude, you do, Well,
you had said a while ago that Miles on some levels didn't like to look back. Occupational hazard.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is when you write the hits that Miles wrote. I think he got himself into situations many musicians do that have hit songs that if you're going to stay active and make money and tour and that, you're playing the same old songs. And
Yeah.
and I find that on my level that I play, people want to hear the old songs. They just they want to hear something that brings up memories. As you said about this tune that we've just finishing up, we're actually mixing it next week and mastering it. This tune is kind of nostalgic for me even to write about because it's a love story in Halifax on Spring Garden Road and, on these streets that are in Halifax. And it's like, it just takes me back to being a kid here in Spring Garden Road and meeting this pretty girl, and getting to know her and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that will have the same effect of people that listen to the song, listen to the lyrics that, oh, Jesus, this reminds me of my youth. If it's older, if it's younger, then it's going to remind them of where they're at now.
What's the proudest moments that you guys have had, April Wine or otherwise, as far as music?
You know what it was? It was when Miles called me in, I don't know where I was, in Costa Rica maybe, and he was in Dominican about 9 or 10 years ago. He called me. He had moved back here to Nova Scotia. He said, Jim, I want to put together an acoustic act. And it started with you and I, he said. And we eventually joined the bass player acoustics, and then we had Steve Gates come in on drums. And he wanted three-piece harmony, which I love. And so he took all those songs from April Wine, and we arranged them with three-piece harmony. It gave me goosebumps, especially just between you and me. That song is such a bitch song, such a great tune. Simple, great tune. That was one of the part of my life where I said, wow, I always wanted to play with him again. I always wanted to write a song with him. Do you know, John, that none of us wrote together? In the 3 or 4 years we were together, none of us wrote together. And while I was doing the acoustic act with Miles, we wrote 4 or 5 songs together. We released 2 or 3 of them, but because they weren't April Wine-ish, they weren't really recognized, But yeah, so that was probably the proudest time for me to be able to go back and play acoustically with Miles, be a harmony singer, him being the lead, a great little band, and it was just fun. My God, it was fun. Now that he's passed, of course, it's even, I suppose, more powerful in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah.
knew since 1963.
You know, we had after April Wine, Richie and I were in a band called the Dudes. Started out as all the young dudes, and then the Dudes. And we got to tour with the Bee Gees. We got to open for a lot of great acts, but one of them was we got to tour with the Bee Gees, and I got to hang out with the main guy, Barry. He actually, when after the tour was over, he was recorded. The Bee Gees were recording at Morin Heights at the studio, and he actually invited me up for one of the sessions, and went up in the morning and sat next to him in the control room, and watched him. He was conducting a string quartet while he was smoking Panama Red. All morning he's smoking Panama Red, and then the engineer says, "Okay, Barry, it's time to go sing." And I'm going, "How's he going to sing?" And he was and gets behind the microphone and sings like an angel. And so that, and then hanging out with I got to hang out with guys like Ian Hunter from Mott the Hoople and Jaco Pastorius, the bass player, the guys in Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Jaco Pastorius, really?
Yeah. Yeah, what a strange dude. And he was an odd musician as well. I went to see him with a Weather Report with Chick Corea, and he was trying to be Jimi Hendrix on bass. And it was a bit of a distraction for me from what the band was all about. It just isn't. But in jazz, of course, they don't play by the rules, which is one of the things I love about jazz. Is you can break all the rules you want in jazz, and nobody's gonna complain. So those were pretty big. Those are pretty big moments for me.
With the magazine, I mean that's. I mean, I didn't know about that before I talked to you. Then I was doing some research, and I'm going, wow.
Yeah, that being a journalist for a while and being the editor of a national magazine, my very first interview was with Leonard Cohen. Oh, talk about starting at the top. I found him to be so gracious, like just to this day, I get chills when I think of his name. He made you feel like every question, and I was a novice, he made you feel like every question you asked him was the most important question he'd ever been asked. That's the kind of character Leonard Cohen was. I have so much admiration for that man.
Proudest moment, I've had time to think about it, and there's so many, like David said, hanging with the Bee Gees, because the Bee Gees were an idol for me when I was about 17. I used to listen to that first album endlessly, and all the subsequent. I probably know all the weird Bee Gees songs that nobody knows. But if I had to pick one moment, it would be the night in Quebec City in version 2 of April Wine, where we had Jimmy Clench on bass, and we had opened for Ike and Tina Turner on their final tour, and when we came off stage, this was at the Colisée in Quebec City, which is, their big arena, like Massey Hall or Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto. When I came off stage, our road manager, Lloyd Bro, was standing there as always with the flashlight because the house lights go off. And as I walked by, he joined me as we all walked down the stairs to go back to our dressing room. And Lloyd said, do you know that Tina stood beside me for your whole set, and when you finished the last song, she turned to me, pointed at you, and said, "He good." And that's, that little 3 or 4 second, that little 3 or 4 second moment of my life was like an endorsement that one of the all-time greats has acknowledged that me, Richie Henman from Chester Basin, Nova Scotia, is a musician.
Yeah.
And that was all. It was like. It was like I had waited all my life to hear that. Somebody of that caliber saying, he's a musician. That was all I wanted to be.
And she was phenomenal.
Yeah.
That night. Oh
Yeah.
my God. We
But
witnessed
yeah,
something that I'll never forget. I can pretty much describe you every moment of that, of her coming on the stage. The band comes out, and they just start cooking, and then Ike comes out and picks up his Stratocaster, and he gets into it. Then the three ICATs come out, and they're like, all you can see is legs and high heels, and they come out and they do all these old torch songs, these old baby songs in 3-part harmony. And at that point, the audience, including us, are like jello. And it's at that point that Tina Turner comes out, and like you're just this like unbelievable. And that was the original Ike and Tina Rhythm and Blues review.
Someone had sent me this morning a piece on Randy Meisner leaving the Eagles. I've talked to Randy a few years before he died, and I talked to Bernie Ledden a few years after that. But the fact that, the no one ever talks about the fact that, well, no one ever talks about the fact that buying a house is hard if you're a musician, because getting a mortgage is not easy if you're a musician. Kenny Passarelli from the Elton John band told me, he says, oh God, Elton John fired me, gave me a big check, and I knew at that point, I think it was in Colorado, he said, I knew at that point I had to buy a house. Randy leaving the Eagles, he had all this technical stuff about leaving, because you leave a band a lot of times, as you guys know, you lose your stake in the band. I mean, the first guy to leave is you, but you get residuals from songs like Bernie Ledden. I told him, I says, how many times you can be called Bernie Leadon before the internet? He says, oh, as long as the checks come in, I don't care what they call me. But leaving the band, Jim, starting with you.
That's a really good question, John, because I was just thinking about that in the last couple of months, or talking to somebody about that. And, we were so naive, hey, Dave?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We were so naive on a business level, even, so I don't even remember signing contracts. I don't remember reading the papers, don't remember getting anybody to look at them to see what they were really saying. But I did realize that I was now 1/4 of April Wine, of whatever April Wine was. I was 1/4 of it. When I left the band, I got nothing. I didn't sign any paper to give anybody any part of April Wine back or anything like that. I just got nothing and walked away. So, and I don't know if that's something that, I should have signed a piece of paper saying,
But early 70s, David and Richie, don't you think, guys, like early 70s, that, and being young, I don't think that would have been that uncommon.
I don't know. What happened to you guys when you left the band? Was there any sign off or anything like that?
I think we got a year's
yeah,
salary.
Yeah.
Got a year's salary.
Yeah.
But no, you didn't have to.
No, we structured ourselves. No, we structured ourselves as a company, April Wine, and we were essentially employees of the company. So when David and I left, then we had to have a financial meeting and figure out everything we've made up till that point, everything we've spent, what each of us individually is going to take away in the way of our equipment. And David and I, basically, we walked away with all our gear and the original sound system that we started out with, because we had brought that had been ours to start with. So we walked away with our gear, and we got, it wasn't a year or so. I think we got 6 months.
6 months, yeah.
We kept getting paid for 6 months after we stopped playing, and that was the deal. And that was good enough for us. We kind of didn't think in those terms of, having a permanent share in the company. Our share in the company, as far as we were concerned, was only relevant while we were part of that company and performing with it. Once we left, once you decide to leave, you're walking away from that. You're saying, okay, that's, we're good, you're good, we're good. And we all agreed on that. Miles and Jimmy Clench did the same thing. When they started a new band, and they still had yet to decide they were going to call it April Wine, they were starting from scratch, just like David and I did with our next band, Silver, and after that, Dudes. We all started our new bands from scratch, but Miles, because him and Jimmy decided to continue using the name April Wine with our blessing, that gave them a little bit of a leg up. I think we probably kind of did that with that in mind, thinking let's give Miles a little kick in the arse to get him going there. We'll keep using the name because it's already got a rep that you can build on.
Yeah.
And we were all fine with that. I mean, it was the best breakup of a band ever, you know.
My dad gave me some after the fact advice way back when, and he said to me, you know, I always wanted to say to you that you should operate under your own name. And here's why. I've been in a lot of bands. So has Richie. Jim, after April Wine, started operating under his own name, Jim Henman, and he's benefiting to this day. He's benefiting from that. And here's why. Every time you start a band and that band breaks up, you're back at square one. Now, that's okay if you're 18. It might be okay if you're 24, and you might even be able to work it out when you're 28 or maybe even into your early 30s. But after a while, there's what's called something about diminishing returns. And when you're starting a new band at age 40 or 45 or 50 or even 60, for goodness sake, you know, good luck. Good luck. So, you know, that's good advice, actually, if there's, you know, any young musicians who are watching this interview. And if you're a singer, you're a songwriter, whatever, and you've got the drive, if you can operate under your own name and stick with that, because you're never going to break up.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're never going to have to start over.
To you, Miles Goodwin was?
He was April Wine.
Yeah, he was.
We left. He was April Wine.
He did all the heavy lifting.
Yeah, he created that sound that he had. He did some amazing writing, and he took it to a place that we would have probably wouldn't have gone. You know,
tremendous drive, like the kind of drive that you need if you want to be, you know, the leader of a band like April Wine and dominate radio in Canada for however many decades. He had tremendous. It was amazing to be on stage with him, you know, and look over and see him singing and playing with such intensity, you know. And you know, when we had our band house, that his bedroom door was closed because he was in there teaching himself how to play piano and teaching himself. He had a book. He was teaching himself how to write songs for radio. And even before that, you know, you know, taking you back to our first rehearsal, you know, we were originally going to do covers and then try and sneak in our originals. And Miles had written a song, and he had written a riff. I don't know if he'd written a whole song or just written this riff, but he played this riff for us that was like just so powerful that we just looked at each other and went, no covers.
It's fair to say he was April Wine. In as much as once the rest of us left and he was the only guy, it could only be his band at that point. He wrote the songs. He was the guy who wrote the hit songs. And so either April Wine was Miles or Miles was April Wine. I think it's interchangeable.
When was the last time you listened to the first album, you guys?
Ooh.
I listened to
Gosh.
I listened to Can't Find the Town just recently because somebody posted it on John Wesley Chisholm, a friend of mine here. He posted it. A little story. He texted me from, I think he was in Rome, walking. He works in television and film and documentaries. And he was over there doing some work. And he was listening to Can't Find the Town while he was there. And it did something to him. He always loved that song, and it did something. And he sent me a little note about it saying how he loved this song. And I was working on a new arrangement just recently, actually, for that song. And so that's the one song I have listened to, yes. Can't Find the Town.
Haven't listened to any of my April Wine stuff in actually I call it my radio station, K103 in Gattawagi, the Mohawk station that I have on all the time. They play Fast Train every once in a while. They play Drop Your Guns, Weeping Weeping Widow, Could Have Been a Lady. They play the later stuff like all the songs by April Wine. They play. They're very strong supporters. They even play "Rolling with the Times" by Cruiser, which was my last single with the band from 1980. So I just, if I hear it on the radio, that's fine. That's fine for me. But I haven't. It's been years since I've actually taken either the vinyl or the CD and put it on and just actually sat and listened to it. And now that you've brought that up, I kind of think I might do that tonight or tomorrow.
It's been decades for me since been decades for me since I listened to that first album. One of the unique things about that first album for me is that if you go on Kate Bush's I think it's Kate Bush. You go on her website, and my two songs, Oceana and Refuge, are listed on her, and the lyrics are on there too on her website for reasons that I can't figure out. But yeah, no, it's been forever since I've listened to that.
How do you guys look at? How do you look at luck?
It seems to happen when you're young. Yeah. I'm not getting a lot of calls these days.
None of us are.
I think luck is, Jim referred to it a little earlier on. 4 guys coming in April 1970 up to Montreal from Nova Scotia. As Jim said, very naive about the music industry. No idea what we're going to do. We're just going to go and knock on doors and try and get a record deal. And that CRTC ruling we came from one direction, and that came from the other direction, and we met in Montreal and discovered that and I don't think we realized why at first. Every door we knocked on, if they said, "Are you a Canadian band?" "Yeah." "Do you write your own songs?" "Yeah." "Come on in, sit down. Can I get you a coffee?" We thought, oh, perhaps our reputation has preceded us or something. Somebody has put the word. When these guys, April Wine, show up, you should pay attention. It took us a little while to realize, oh, it's the CRTC ruling. There's not enough bands writing original material to fulfill that 30% content that they need. So if you were like us, an original band, yes, come on in. What do you got? Let's hear the songs. They were desperate so that's luck. Or a coincidence or a kismet. I don't know. I think they're all the same.
Yeah, but those songs have stood the test of time. That's another side of that too.
Yeah.
That's true.
No, it's true. In the end, we delivered. We did come up with the songs. A lot of bands didn't, and they vanished. They did one single, maybe even an album, and you never heard from them again. And sadly, some of them were very good bands. They just didn't have the material.
I think we make our own luck. I really believe that. I mean, any decisions I've made in life that were honest, heartfelt, and they weren't really self-centered. That's the thing. The characteristics that I take into account. The things that I do that aren't self-centered have brought out more what you might call luck than anything. It's when I have ulterior motives, or I'm manipulative, or I'm those kind of characteristics that are a little sleazy. When you do those things, when I do those things, things don't work. When I use those characteristics that make it try to, anyways, that are supposedly called a good human being. Care about other people and look after other people and do things not just for yourself, but for others too. I think that makes luck.
Any regrets about leaving the band, and why did you leave the band first?
When we split up, I don't know. I personally don't have any regrets. Probably for the same reason as Jim. I don't know. I can't speak for Jim. I was a bit of an excessive personality, and I just get the feeling if I had continued on with April Wine at that point when they became much, much bigger, I'd like to think that I would have put the brakes on. But I was, I was lucky that I couldn't afford, to drink all the booze I would have loved to have drunk, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I mean, I could be wrong about that, but that's what's kind of stuck with me is that I kind of got lucky at that point and had to struggle. And I don't, I don't regret it. I mean, when I was young, I wanted to be a pop star. Now that I'm in my late 70s, I just want to be a musician. I mean, that's easy for me to say because there's nobody saying to me, David, you could be a 77-year-old pop star, So,
No, I never had any regrets about leaving the band because it was time to move on. David and I, that was the longest we ever kept a band together. We normally we'd keep a band together for 2 years and achieve certain things and say, okay, we did that. Let's try something. We just always wanted to try something new, and I'm still that way with music.
Yeah.
I'm still always looking for something new to play.
my wife and I did an open mic yesterday here at the marina where we live in Newcastle, Ontario, and this couple got up, Steve and Amanda, and the first song they did. They did it. They had come up with this arrangement for "You Won't Dance with Me," April Wine, and "That Boy" by the Beatles. Mashed them. They'd done a mashup. It was really good. It was really good because as the song progressed, they first did a couple of verses and a chorus of "You Won't Dance with Me," and then it morphed into "That Boy" by the Beatles, and then they started mashing them. So she would be singing a verse from "You Won't Dance with Me," and he would be singing "That Boy," and then they would turn it around and he would sing "That Boy," and she would sing the chorus or whatever from and then they finished it up with the part of where it goes into "Why," and one of the "Oh, why do I bother to try," and the other one would continue with "That Boy." It was fascinating.
And Miles wrote that, I think he had said when he was quite young, "You Won't Dance With Me." Is that the one? Yeah. Yeah.
Jim knows about this. He had taken two songs that he had written when they had Woody's Termites. One was called "You Won't Dance With Me," and another one was called "Why." There might even have been a third song in the mixture. I'm not sure.
I think it's two, David. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. And we used to play it in Woody's Terminus.
The thing is, on the road, you deal with a lot of boredom. You're just a lot of hours of nothing to do while you're waiting to be called for the sound check. You're waiting for the show. You can't go anywhere. You can't leave town. So there's a lot of downtime on the road, and that's where I think one of the places you get in trouble. And I mean, musicians for years, I never paid for a drink. My entire 20s, I don't think I ever paid for a drink. And I mean, I lived in Montreal during the cocaine years, and people always want to they always want to share their cocaine with you. Hey, come on, buddy, let's go ahead, let's do a line. So you didn't even need the money at that point.
Make sure you subscribe to our channel. It's very important. We have a Facebook group. The link is in the description. Comment on our videos. We read all the comments. Share our videos on social media and like our videos. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Canada. Take care.